necessary in order to understand the basics of music publishing. As we've kind of already talked about, publishing is very complex. There's a lot of moving pieces. This presentation is really made to simplify this entire process. And just to let you guys know, I'm going to run through this pretty casually. I don't really have notes. I've done this presentation multiple times a week for about a year. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I can get to them. If we're on a slide and you have questions, please feel free to stop me. And let's get started. So here's the agenda. What we're going to walk through today. We're going to get to know the breakdown of an original song, what the master recording means versus the composition, how those copyrights differ. We'll learn the essential parts of the global publishing system, so all those moving pieces, how they fit together to make the industry work. We'll get to know some important metadata points, so all these numbers that we're using to ensure that your songs are being properly registered. After that, we'll understand the 4 vital steps, or these 4 things that SongTrust has identified that every independent artist or creator has to take in order to be fully covered. And then at the end, we can go through SongTrust specifically, how we fit within the industry, and some of the problems that the SongTrust model solve. So we start with the music, obviously the most important part, and what happens when you write an original song. So as soon as your song goes into tangible form, you own the copyright to that song and you are the publisher. So to break that down a little bit, once your song goes into tangible form, that means that essentially it's outside of your head, right? It could mean that you've written it down on sheet music. It could be in your digital audio workstation like Ableton or Reaper or Fruity Loops or whatever you use, or it could be actually recorded and released. As soon as it's out of your head, as soon as it's down in some type of tangible form, at that point you own the copyright to that song. So common misconception and a question that I get a lot is, do I have to register with the US Copyright Office or the local copyright office in whatever country you might be in? The answer to that is basically no, right? You are already the copyright holder. Registering with your local copyright office is never something that I would encourage someone not to do. It's essentially the highest form of intellectual property protection that you can get for your song, for your works. But for our intents and purposes, when we talk about your publishing, when we talk about your royalty collection, you do not have to register that copyright in order to collect royalties for it, right? So you already are the copyright owner. You are the publisher of that work as soon as it goes on into tangible form. Through ownership, you're granted these various rights. So the right to reproduce, obviously the right to make copies of that song, the right to distribute those copies, the right to perform that work in public, make derivatives like remixes, and then the right to display the work publicly, which for our intents and purposes really means more to digitally transmit that work. Through the exercise of these rights, right, you're generating royalties, right? So every time the work is copied, every time that copy is distributed, every time the work is performed, a derivative is made, or it's digitally transmitted, royalties are generated. And the royalties we're going to talk about today are mechanical royalties, performance royalties, and micro sync. So performance royalties. These are generated when your song is performed or played in public, at a music venue, at a restaurant, in a film, right? These are all instances of something that would generate a performance royalty. There's also a performance royalty that's generated from streaming. So Spotify, Apple Music, digital service platforms, when they stream your song, a performance royalty is generated. Mechanical royalties, on the other hand, these are generated whenever your song is reproduced. So if a CD is made with your song on it, if a vinyl is pressed with your song on it, digital downloads create a mechanical royalty. So somebody buys your song on iTunes, that creates a mechanical royalty. And there's also a mechanical royalty from interactive streaming. So when I say interactive streaming, I mean the listener has a choice as to what they're listening to. It's an important distinction. Non-interactive streaming is treated differently. So interactive streaming like that of Spotify is going to create both a performance and a mechanical royalty. And honestly, this didn't make sense to me for a long, long time. I could understand why, I click a song on Spotify, it plays through my computer. Okay, it's creating a performance royalty. I get it. But why, when, a mechanical royalty is made for a CD, a digital download, a vinyl press, why does a stream on Spotify create a mechanical royalty? Well, the easiest answer that I've heard about this is basically when a service like Spotify streams a song on your computer, a copy of that song is made and put onto your server, onto your computer server. That is the only way that a song can actually be streamed from your device. So in essence, there is a copy being made, even if it's temporary and digital, onto your server. And that's essentially why both a performance and a mechanical royalty are associated with streaming. And the third type is microsync royalties. So these refer to specifically YouTube and Vimeo. We're not talking about television or film royalties here, right? And microsyncs, these create both a performance and a mechanical royalty, just like an interactive stream from Spotify. So YouTube Play, same thing as a stream from Spotify, and creating both a performance and a mechanical royalty, right? So let's dig a little bit deeper into the copyrights here. Like I said in the agenda, we're going to go over the master versus the composition. So you have an original song. What that means is you put it into tangible form and you haven't copied it, right? It's not a cover. An original song actually has two very separate copyrights that create two very separate streams of revenue, right? So one is for the composition, or what we refer to as the publishing, and the other is for the master recording, or the actual recording of that composition. So to kind of illustrate this, I have a quick story for you. Whitney Houston, she wrote a song, or she released a song, called "I Will Always Love You" in November of 1992. She released it on Arista Records, that was run by Clive Davis. And that song was a huge hit, #1 on the Billboard charts. It was in the movie The Bodyguard. Huge success. Whitney Houston and Arista Records, they owned the master of that release. They had access to the master recording royalties, the royalties that are being generated through the use of that master. But Whitney Houston didn't write the song "I Will Always Love You." Dolly Parton actually wrote that song. Dolly Parton wrote the song some 30 years before, famously on the same night that she wrote Jolene, another famous Dolly Parton song, right? So the story goes, Dolly Parton writes "I Will Always Love You." She releases her own version of the song. Elvis hears the song and he reaches out. He says, "Hey, I want to cover "I Will Always Love You." Dolly Parton at this time owns her publishing. But because Elvis is Elvis, when Elvis would cover your song at the time, he would take 50% of your publishing ownership. He would take 50% of your composition and 50% of the access to your publishing royalties, right? Dolly Parton says, no, I love you, Elvis, but I can't give up that amount of ownership for this song. I know it would, probably blow this song up, but I can't afford to give up my publishing. So she denies him. 30 years later, Whitney Houston records her version. That song becomes the #1 selling song by a female vocalist of all time. The whole time that this song is playing, being used, being bought, keep in mind, Dolly Parton retains ownership of the publishing on that song and retains these royalties that are being generated, even though it's off Whitney Houston and Arista Records master, right? Just a quick story to really dictate how these are very separate. They're very separate assets, very separate copyrights that generate different revenue. So on the master side, we have digital performance royalties and master recording revenues that are generated from the use of the master. And then on the publishing side or the composition side, those are interchangeable. You have performance royalties and mechanical royalties. This is a bit SongTrust centric, right? Like I said at the beginning, SongTrust works very hard to simplify this publishing process. So if you're familiar with publishing, you'll probably kind of look at this a little screwed up. Master recording revenues, these are a type of mechanical royalties, right? We just differentiate them to make it a little bit easier. So when we talk about the master, I mean, this is obviously a music publishing 101 presentation, but this is important to know as well. When we talk about the master, your master recording revenues are these mechanical royalties that are generated from the use of your master recording. Those are collected by your distributor or label. So a lot of people use DistroKid, CD Baby, Symphonic, right? There are tons of different independent distribution options. They might even have a record deal, and that record label may be using another independent distributor to facilitate these things. They're collecting your master recording revenues. Then you have digital performance royalties, also due to the master recording owner. These specifically, they are non-interactive streaming royalties. So we talked about interactive streaming royalties being a situation where the listener has choice as to what they're listening to. Non-interactive streaming is going to be free Pandora accounts, internet radio, Sirius XM. That creates a digital performance royalty in the US, which is collected by Sound Exchange. So Sound Exchange is a government-run organization, free to sign up with. I always encourage all of my clients to sign up with Sound Exchange. They're the only ones of their kind that collect this specific royalty type within the US. Outside of the US, because we do everything differently, these royalties, they're called neighboring rights. So PPL is a big organization in the UK that collects neighboring rights. It is essentially the same thing. It is a non-interactive streaming royalty that's collected for the master recording owner. And now we'll go over to the composition side. This slide is a bit of a lot. I completely understand, but the composition side, the publishing side, is quite a bit more complex. We're going to start top left. So on the composition side, you have performance and mechanical royalties. Your performance royalties, these are collected by PROs or performance rights organizations, and CMOs, collective management organizations, which are again outside of the US, throughout the world. So PROs, performance rights organizations, you have a big three in the US: ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. These organizations collect your performance royalties, and when they do, they get broken down into two separate shares. So let's say I'm an ASCAP writer. ASCAP is a performance rights organization collecting my performance royalties, and they're breaking it down into two separate shares: my writer's share and my publisher's share. So half of my performance royalties from ASCAP, they're going to send me directly. The writer's share of your performance royalties, your PRO or your CMO sends the affiliated writer directly. So if I'm an ASCAP writer, they're sending me straight my writer's share. The publisher's share, on the other hand, your other half of performance royalties, these are again sent from your PRO or your CMO, but this time to an affiliated publishing entity. So what is that? If any of you are songwriters, you've probably seen at ASCAP or BMI, you have the ability to create a publishing account. What that's doing is setting you up with a publishing entity that you can use to then represent yourself as a writer and collect this publisher's share, right? So other examples of publishing entities would be if you're working with a publisher, like a traditional publisher or a publishing administrator, they would have their own publishing entities set up at organizations like ASCAP or other PROs in order to collect on this publisher's share for you, right? When you go over to mechanical royalties, these are collected by mechanical pay sources throughout the world. So otherwise known as mechanical agencies. In the US, you have another big three. HFA is Harry Fox Agency, MRI is Music Reports, and then MediaNet. So for example, Spotify, when they collect your mechanical royalties, they pay out through HFA. TikTok, right? A new kind of player on the music scene, they pay out through MRI, Music Reports. So these organizations may collect from different sources. You also have the MLC, which is a new kind of big player in the world of digital mechanical licensing. They collect digital mechanicals from the US, and they sort of wrap up US digital mechanical collection from these three organizations. They just became active in January of 2021. As you can see, mechanical royalties. Yeah.
Hey, George, would you mind touching a little bit more on the MLC?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a tad bit more, if you won't mind.
Of course. So the MLC, like I said, they just became active January 1st, 2021. They are really meant to streamline the process of collecting and distributing mechanical royalties, and specifically digital mechanical royalties within the US. So like I said before, you had this big three, Harry Fox Agency, Music Reports, and MediaNet, that were all collecting from these different sources. The MLC is really meant to solidify the collection of digital mechanical royalties in the US and give people one place they can go to for that. They are paid for by the streaming services, actually are funding this. And HFA, Harry Fox Agency, is licensed to basically start up the MLC. So they're using HFA data right now. Really cool thing about the MLC, they're going to do, so we just had a meeting with them, they're going to do something that nobody's really doing right now, which is have a publicly searchable database of unclaimed and uncollected royalties. Super exciting. Nobody's really doing that right now. That level of transparency hasn't really been seen in the publishing industry. The MLC is definitely a step forward in a new kind of very transparent and digital focused royalty collection idea that I think publishing is hopefully headed towards. As you can see, mechanical royalties, no matter where they're coming from, only break down into a publisher share. So again, you need some sort of publishing entity or some sort of publishing affiliation in order to collect this publisher's share. And so just to wrap it up, you have performance rights organizations collecting performance royalties that are broken down into a writer's and publisher's share. And then you have mechanical pay sources or agencies collecting mechanical royalties and paying out to an affiliated publishing entity. But how do all of these organizations actually know who you are, what songs you own the copyrights to, and where you are to pay out? This brings us to song registration. Song registration is really the cornerstone of the publishing industry. It's how copyright holders match data with these organizations that we just talked about and how they get paid out. So this is some of the basic stuff that you would see on a song's registration. Of course, title, including any alternate versions. You're going to have songwriter name and IPI. So songwriter name is usually going to be government name, for lack of a better word, or legal name. And that's so you can match it with multiple artist names if you have multiple projects, right? It's all going to come back to your single songwriter name. Along with songwriter name, you're going to have your IPI number. This is an interested parties information number. It's used to uniquely identify you as a songwriter or a publisher within the industry. It's a little bit like your ID code in the industry. Your IPI is assigned by your PRO when you affiliate. Along with songwriter name and IPI, confirmed splits is definitely the most important part of a song's registration. Confirmed splits just say, hey, here are the writers on this song, and here is their ownership percentage. Having confirmed splits is one of the most important parts of a song's registration because, say, you and I write a song together, and I think that the ownership is split 50-50, I assume, but it was your studio, and you wrote the hook and the bridge and a verse, and you made the beat, and I only provided one verse to the song. If we go and register our respective ownership, and I register it at 50-50, but say you register it at 75-25, what happens in publishing is those splits go into conflict, and no one will be paid until that conflict is resolved. So having confirmed splits and being on the same page, literally, is super important in publishing, and just making sure that everyone is paid out properly when it comes time to collect. So along with confirmed splits, your song titles, your songwriter name, and their IPIs, there are a couple codes that are very important to tracking your songs. ISWCs, these are International Standard Musical Work Codes, and it's a unique code for the composition of your song. It's assigned again, by PROs, just like your IPI. So there can only be one single ISWC code for each composition. ISRCs, on the other hand, this is International Standard Recording Code. This is a single recording. This is a code for a single recording of your song, and you can have multiple ISRCs tied to a single ISWC, just like you can have multiple recordings of the same composition, right? So if we go back to the Whitney Houston, Dolly Parton example, Dolly Parton wrote that song, released her own version. She would have a single ISWC and her own ISRC. When Whitney Houston released her version, it would have the same ISWC that Dolly Parton's version had, but a different ISRC, right? And so all these 5 things are really the cornerstone of your registration. There is more included, and really in publishing, we say like the more information you can include, the better, because people track differently, and the most information you can give to your publisher or whatever party is trying to track that down for you, the better, right? And it really comes into play when you talk about what happens when your songs aren't registered or get registered with improper data. That brings us to this slide about unallocated royalties, right? This, if you don't know about it, this is probably gonna blow your mind. I know it blew mine. So this happens when a finished song goes out, enters distribution, and begins to earn royalties, begins to play, but for some reason, the songwriter payout gets interrupted. It could be due to the fact that you don't have the song registered. Maybe you don't have an affiliation to a collection society as a writer, or maybe you don't have publishing, so you're not collecting on these publishers' shares. If you're leaving out a certain portion of those royalties, or you could have all of these things, but the song could have incorrect data or be in conflict, like we talked about. Either way, whatever happens, the retroactive wait period is the amount of time that these organizations like PROs and mechanical licensing agencies are going to hang on to the royalties that they've collected on your behalf. So at SongTrust, we work with 55 of these different pay sources. Every pay source has a different stipulation as to how long they're going to hang on to this money for you. On average, we've seen it's about 2 to 3 years, after which time this wait period expires and the royalties enter what we call the black box, which is this ominous industry term for you lost your money, basically. I've always thought the black box was a bit of a misnomer. A box usually means something that you can put things in and then get them right back out, right? It doesn't work this way. With the black box, once those royalties enter, they cannot be retrieved. And what's happening in practice is that, let's use the ASCAP example again. Say I have uncollected revenue at ASCAP. ASCAP is going to wait this retroactive wait period. Then they're going to say, hey, looks like Adele did 30% of our revenue this quarter, and we have this pool of uncollected royalties. Well, let's take 30% of these uncollected royalties that have expired past this retroactive wait period and give them to Adele's publishers as a bonus. So they keep coming back to us, so they keep giving us business. In practice, that's what's happening. And these publishers and these folks that really had nothing to do with the time and effort that it goes into creating, marketing, performing this music, this independent music, are end up benefiting, right, from the lack of knowledge in the independent music community. And so it's something that we're all trying to avoid. And in order to do that, SongTrust has kind of created this short checklist. I do have this in PDF form, so I'll just share that real quick in the chat in case anybody wants to save that or share it. Let's see if I can get to the chat here.
Yeah, that's great, George. And also anybody who would like any of this extra content, we'll have some more information during our Q&A session following this as well. And you can always email clevelandnashville@gmail.com, and we'll help connect you to any information we can as well.
Absolutely. So here's the creator's checklist. I'll run through this very quickly. Distribution, obviously, your independent distributor, your label, get your music out there, and remember they collect on those master recording revenues. On the master side, you also have Sound Exchange or your counterpart neighboring rights organization. They're collecting on non-interactive streaming, digital performance royalties, or neighboring rights. On the publishing side, you want to make sure you're affiliated with the collection society, whether that be your local or ASCAP, BMI. A great thing about SongTrust is if a writer is not affiliated with the Collection Society, when they reach us, we can affiliate them through our platform and waive any application fees. So if they're a US citizen, we can affiliate with ASCAP BMI. If they're Canadian, SOCAN. And then if they're outside of the US or Canada, we can affiliate them with IMRO, which is based in Ireland, which I always get a funny amount of backlash on. They're like, Ireland, I'm in South Africa, or I'm in Amsterdam. Like, why would I affiliate to the PRO in Ireland? Which is understandable. The traditional advice for affiliating with the PRO is that you should affiliate with your local PRO, or at least the PRO in the territory where you think the most fans are. These days, while everything is digital and while you can be streaming literally anywhere, that advice holds a little bit less water. Again, your PRO, your home affiliation, is a bit like your home address. And as long as that address comes from a reputable performance rights organization, IMRO is one of them, you'll be able to route all your money correctly. So along with affiliation with the Collection Society, you're going to want to make sure you're covered in your publishing as well. Publishing can come from a lot of different places, and we'll start to get into SongTrust a little bit here. So traditionally, publishers, we're talking about Sony ATV, BMG, Warner. Those are the big players in this space. And even as recently as 8 to 10 years ago, traditional publishing was really limited to pretty much a top tier of artists. Traditional publishing deals, right? It was pretty tough to get a publishing deal. And what a publishing deal means is that a publisher has taken an interest in you, and they are going to handle several different things for you. One, they're going to handle the administration of your work. What that means is they're going to register your songs, and they're going to collect royalties for you. Two, they're going to probably handle creative services. So creative services can include shopping your songs around. They might look for a recording artist to actually record that composition. They might look for sync opportunities to place your songs in film or television, right? A traditional publisher might also offer you an advance that's recoupable on the money that they can collect on your behalf. Traditional publishing would usually lock you into a couple of years at least of a deal, and they would usually take on the majority, if not the entirety, of your catalog. So enter SongTrust. SongTrust is a solution for publishing administration. And SongTrust is actually born of a traditional publisher. So Downtown Music would be considered probably a traditional publisher. They've been around for a while. And the creators had this idea that publishing royalty collection or publishing administration should be offered to the widest amount of people possible. So they created SongTrust. And what SongTrust is essentially a stripped down version of the traditional publishing deal. SongTrust does not handle creative services like pitching your music for film or television. We don't pitch songs to be recorded. What we handle specifically is royalty collection. So SongTrust has created this network of 55 pay sources that span royalty collection in over 160 different countries. This is an example of some of the organizations that we work with. They're not all pictured here. But SongTrust has essentially created this network of royalty collection and allowed independent songwriters and publishers access to plug in their songs with us, and we go out and register them all over the world, collect what they're due, and bring it all back into one place. So this network, that in size and ability, like I said, was really previously only available to kind of a top tier of artists that were receiving these traditional publishing deals. And what SongTrust did that was kind of so revolutionary at the time, 8 or 9 years ago, was democratize this process and allow independent songwriters, from Grammy-winning singer and songwriters to folks that are kind of just starting out, access to this level of royalty collection. And I see maybe a question from the chat.
Real quick to ask his question, and then we'll go ahead and do that, Brian, and then we'll go ahead and let's see here. You know what, actually, if you don't mind, Brian, can you save your question? We're going to get through the last part of this part of the
Almost done.
webinar, and then we'll go ahead and just save your question. I'm going to bring you up as a panelist. I'm going to bring some of you guys up to be able to ask those questions at the end here, if you don't mind.
So SongTrust was really able to democratize this process of royalty collection and allow the same service to again, Grammy-winning singer-songwriters and producers, as well as folks who were just starting out. And I know from the inside, I've signed both, and it's a pleasure to be able to treat them on the same level, because at the end of the day, I think the company really do believe that everyone should have access to these royalties that they're creating, whether it's pennies or whether they're in the thousands and hundreds of thousands. So SongTrust, the model has been very successful. This should be updated. It's actually around 400,000 and 3.5 million copyrights represented. 400,000 songwriters are registered through our platform, and I think part of the reason that they've been able to be so successful is the ease of use. SongTrust created this kind of very simple platform that's very powerful. So this is just where you'll enter your songwriter information, email, first name, PRO, IPI, like we talked about. If you're not with a PRO, this would then send you to a page where you would affiliate with the PRO through our platform and waive application fees. So then this is a typical ASCAP registration that you'll see. So ASCAP splits writers and publishers share 50-50. As you can see here, ASCAP controls 50% of this writer's registration. This writer's share will be paid out directly to this writer. SongTrust is representing this writer as a publisher. So what's really happening here is that Scott is administering his ownership through SongTrust. One of the great things about this model is that writers and publishers, they don't give up any ownership of their copyright to SongTrust. We simply administer the work, and we take a commission on the money that we're able to collect on their behalf. So this doesn't dictate ownership, this dictates administration, right? So you're not actually giving up any ownership of your copyright. This is how it'll look on your SongTrust registration page when you're going to register a new song. Again, we need song title, songwriters, their APIs. You'll enter in a different page. There's splits. Your ISWCs come from your PRO. So if you haven't registered the song yet, you wouldn't have them. That's why they're optional. And then when you're putting in your ISRCs, we have this cool page where you can actually just go in and simply search the song on Spotify, click it, will populate the recording information straight from there. So it's all fairly simple. The SongTrust model is really kind of meant to be straight to the point and without frills, to ensure that there are the least amount of places to mess up, right? At the end of the day, the data is coming from us as the creators and as the independent contractors of these copyrights. And part of the reason why it's so important to keep things simple is that conflicts and confusion can create a situation where money is lost or money is unallocated, right? And then redistributed. So SongTrust is really all about keeping things simple, keeping things straightforward and to the point, and doing what we do as best that we can. And that's essentially it, right? I have a little Q&A here of general questions, but Brandon, David, I know you wanted to step in here possibly.
Yeah, George, man, great job. So what I did was I posted in the panelist link or in the chat box, if you would like to get involved with SongTrust, we have a special referral link. We get $10 to help produce more content like this, and then you save $10. It's a 10-10 referral deal, and you can be able to pass on that savings to your network and your people if you sign up. It's something that they do. But really, I just want to share real quick before we go into the Q&A session with the Fixx Radio Show is my personal experience of being involved in the music business all these years in different aspects was one thing I always knew in my gut, George, was that the publishing side, and I had a mentor that really helped, he had a lot of information on that, but I was more interested in the sizzle, the shows, the, hand-to-hand flyers and all that stuff. That's the fun stuff, right? The intellectual property management, though, I knew because I was turned on to Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he talked a lot about passive residual income. Rob Crichlow would talk about that in the leadership business that he's involved in. And so I knew in my gut. So finally I got old enough, had enough bruises and scrapes and enough wise counsel to say, you know what, we're going to buckle down and I'm going to do it right this time and have the intellectual property management at the core. Being able to be connected with one of the top companies, Downtown Music Publishing. If y'all don't know, Google them, look them up. They handle some of the biggest, most prestigious catalogs in the world. And they went, and a lot of companies will stay in their ivory towers and just, really stay in that realm. They really figured out the solution. It's not 100%, but they're working to get there, incrementally and piece by piece to empower the independent artists, entrepreneurs, publishing companies to really, we get through SongTrust, we get the same access to the same tools and people that most people, if they were blessed or however you want to look at it, whatever end of the scale you look at it, to have a traditional publisher, you get that and so much more with SongTrust. So our job with RCR Publishing and the Cleveland Nashville connection is to provide some more of that personal touch. But George Clark and the SongTrust team, they really help. George has been like a concierge for us, helping guide us through this process. And he's also got access to experts even though he admits humbly, none of us really on the call are experts in publishing, but yet we can have access to expertise and information through these systems. So I'm personally signed up with SongTrust. RCR Publishing is signed up. Feel free to use that link. If anything, if you don't have anything else, what I'd like to, and here's the deal, is you get for $100 to sign up with SongTrust. They're only taking a 15% commission through that to collect your royalties and make sure you maintain the ownership rights, you maintain the masters to your music. If you'd like to save $10, go ahead and use that link in the description or in the chat box. But without any further ado, if you don't mind, George, can we go ahead and turn it over to the Fixx Radio Show and start this Q&A session and get it rocking?
Yeah, please do.
Awesome.
Well,
cool, everybody. Let's give George a nice proverbial round of applause.
Thank you.
That's
cool.
Funny.
So, hey, I'm going to turn it over to DJ Focus. I'm sure you took some notes, and I also, before we want to invite our attendees up to the panelist realm. This is something we love to do in our Music Tech Media Summits. Is if you attend this call, you sign up on the Zoom. We love the Q&A backside of this deal to be able to allow you to ask some questions and share and hopefully build some rich relationships. So without any further ado, I turn this over to DJ Focus from the Fixx Radio Show and spotlight artist Bri Smilez.
Thanks a lot. Listen, George, that was a great presentation. You answered like 7 of my questions. So I just want to put that out there. So I really appreciate you being prepared and a great presentation. Something that artists always ask when you talk about why should they sign on with a publishing company and have a publisher, one of the things they always have questions about is typically there's a few different kind of deals an artist can sign with a publisher. Can you speak a little bit about and explain pretty much the difference between the different publishing agreements? You have your traditional, your co-publishing agreement, your sub-publishing agreement, your administrative agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the traditional, I think we went over, right? They're going to take over your whole catalog. They're usually going to put you in a deal for a couple of years. There are, upsides to that. A lot of the times you're getting into a traditional publishing deal with a company that has a lot of muscle. They have a lot of opportunity to shop your songs. When you talk about a co-publishing deal, you're talking about ownership. So a traditional publishing deal could be a co-publishing deal. What a co-publishing deal means is that you maintain part ownership of your copyright, and the publisher also will take over part of your copyright. So usually it's 50-50. They're going to take half of your publishing, so that no party has a stake more than the other. So decisions are made as a group. But co-publishing deals range, right? 75, 25, 80, 20, all kinds of co-publishing deals exist. Anything that you can even imagine. When you talk about administrative deals, those usually are not going to include any transfer of ownership. SongTrust is an administrative deal. When you talk about administration, you're usually just talking about the X's and O's, right? The ones and twos. They're collecting what you're due. They're making sure your songs are registered properly. A little bit like an accountant, right? Administration deals, again, don't take over any of your copyright, and they'll usually last a bit less time. So with SongTrust, it's a 1-year term, and you're on a song by song basis. So you choose exactly the works that you want to put into that catalog for us to administer. It's completely your choice. You can leave certain parts of your catalog out, and once you do submit a song with us, they'll be in term for 1 year. After that year, we'll continue to collect on it, and it's basically month to month, right? Like whenever you want to take the song to another publisher, or if you get offered another publishing deal, you can take that deal and we'll send you a letter of relinquishment. And that's how most publishing administration deals work from at least the major publishing administrators. When you talk about sub-publishing, this is something that publishers use in territories usually that are a bit difficult to collect from. So you might use a sub-publisher in Japan who has their own kind of copyright economy and their own rules. Germany, for example, is a very difficult place for a lot of publishers to collect from. In order to affiliate with the PRO GEMA, you need a certain amount of German writers signed to your publishing company. So there can be certain barriers to entry for a lot of these places, in which you would use a sub-publisher that was already affiliated and already on the ground collecting in that territory to collect on your assets in that area. SongTrust specifically is very proud of our network because we don't use a lot of sub-publishing. We only really use it in a couple of territories, meaning people are just getting the money a little bit faster and it's touching less hands.
Great. You want to send it over to Bri Smilez, DJ?
Absolutely. Do you have anything, Bri?
Oh, no. The only thing that I wanted to ask was, do you guys also track BDS? Or is that something completely different?
I'm sorry, BDS. I'm not. There's so many acronyms.
Oh,
sorry.
The broadcast data systems?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that would be Nielsen. I think Nielsen would be doing most of that, or companies like Nielsen. We are really an intermediary between a lot of these folks that are using. So SongTrust would use a company like Nielsen to track that data to make sure that the PROs are paying us out properly, right? Yeah. So we're keeping them accountable with services like Nielsen to make sure that they're accurately collecting for our catalog.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I do actually have one more question, George. So you definitely talked about pretty much how long the contracts go, but is there a minimum delivery commitment on the contracts or the different agreements? So
with SongTrust specifically, there's not. You can sign up with one song, right? And you can get paid out as soon as you make, I think it's $5. So there's really not. It's flexible. It's a tool for your publishing administration service, and there's not a minimum commitment, except for we take that 15% commission on whatever we can collect on your behalf. So it is fairly flexible. You're not obligated to really give us anything. It's more of a DIY tool.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Something I want to bring up.
Brandon, before you roll, could I ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those ID numbers that you were specifying towards the beginning of the presentation, do you guys go ahead and provide those numbers for us?
Yeah, so we talked about IPI, ISRC, and ISWC. The IPI maybe I think is what you're talking about. Yeah, so if writers aren't with a PRO, we'll affiliate them with a PRO as a writer, waive application fees of them. Excuse me, and then when their application comes back, it'll come back with an IPI. So yeah, we'll provide those to you.
But there were two other IDs, SDI something, blah, blah, blah.
Your ISRCs, those come from your distributor. So when you release the song, they'll assign it an ISRC. Those you'll provide to us. Then ISWCs, those come from your PRO. So if the song has already been registered, you would provide it to us. But if it hasn't and you're registering it for the first time with SongTrust, we would backfill it from your PRO.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something too to note, everybody, is my experience was I had never personally affiliated with a PRO as somebody in the business side as well as a songwriter. So when RCR Publishing, when we recently signed up with SongTrust to help the artists, and they have some great technology aspects to what they provide. So let's just say you sign up as a songwriter, right? But you want to work with RCR Publishing on a few different songs or projects. And maybe you want us to help have a little more personal touch administration to help maybe with some sync licensing options, or just having that extra support that we can provide. Is SongTrust allows us to collaborate some of our accounts and oversee some things and connect on the technology side. So not only do you get collaboration with, some other teams like RCR Publishing, Cleveland Nashville Connection, but the fact that I wasn't signed up as a PRO and I signed up with SongTrust and paid for a membership, I was automatically within minutes signed up with, I chose BMI, right? So, I just want to tell you as a songwriter, if you are not affiliated, just go ahead and click that link. If you're able to invest that $100, you get $10 off that link. You will literally I felt so good. Like I felt like I passed the driver's license test or something, so, and maybe George, can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe some different ways real quick before we go into some of the other attendees, maybe just touch base on how the technology side and collaboration side where songwriters can work still with collaborate with other publishers, but still maintain their masters.
Before
Absolutely.
you answer that question, George, could you weave into it one other question? And that is, let's say that a person, let's say 400 years ago, registered with BMI, didn't know what the contact details, maybe forgot all their numbers, their house burned down, I don't know. And they re-register with you guys through us or whatever, and they go ahead and ask for the new PMO type action to happen. Do they check for duplicates and things of that nature?
Yeah, so this happens all the time. And what I always encourage folks to do is go back as close to the source as you can. To kind of fix the problem. So if you're already a BMI, ideally in an ideal world, if you're already a BMI writer, when you submit your application with SongTrust, it will to ASCAP, let's say, or again to BMI, it'll come back and say, hey, you're a BMI writer. Sometimes that doesn't happen, right? Because maybe it's a legacy account. And they don't have it, right? We're not connected to that API. If you know, or if you have any inkling that you maybe have already affiliated, I always suggest reach out, go to the source, see about getting your affiliation either canceled or continuing with that same API that they gave you originally before moving on, because then things can stack. I talk to people all the time who mistakenly have two separate PROs, and that can really mess with your money routing. It can really mess with stuff down the road. So yeah, going back to the source and trying to clean up everything as close to the source as you can is always my advice. Yeah, absolutely. And then to speak to what Brandon David was saying, yeah, the SongTrust contract is cool because it's non-exclusive. So we obviously are accepting a lot of writers, right? So, and a lot of those writers are just starting out or are to the point where, you know, they're interested in publishing, but maybe they're not looking to give up ownership yet, or they're not ready for a traditional publishing deal. And so a huge benefit of the SongTrust deal is that you can actually sign with another publisher while you're still in term with us. You're not signed as an artist to SongTrust. You're on a song by song basis with us. So you can actually sign a contract with another publisher while you're still in term. And we're big enough now, and we've been around long enough now that the majors all know us. They know that we're song by song. They know that we're 1 year minimum term. So they'll usually wait out the term on those songs that you already have registered with us. And after that, they can take over those registrations. But keep in mind, they can do everything else that we don't do. They can pitch your music for sync. They can shop your songs. They can look for other placement opportunities for your work while they're still in term with us, just for the royalty administration.
Yeah, that's a great point, and something I love. Can you maybe touch on a little bit of how what I loved hearing from you was you guys have some technology things where we could actually, if you're already a SongTrust writer, where some ways where you can collaborate the accounts where, say, us as a publisher or somebody that's going to help that artist find some sync licensing opportunities where we could help oversee connect their accounts to our main account.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting all the good Easter eggs, man. This is something they call access. So access basically, in the most simple terms, gives one account the ability to have access to a songwriter in another account. So say, Cleveland National Connection has one singular SongTrust account, but say you have artists with other separate accounts. So you can use access to essentially give the Cleveland Nashville Connection account access to this songwriter and this songwriter and this songwriter, so that when they go and register songs, it'll show up in the Cleveland Nashville Connection account as well as all of these other artist accounts. So in that way, you can administer from kind of like a ghost account, and you can connect different accounts and different payout sources. And one of the drawbacks to having everybody in one account, which you can also do, you can have multiple songwriters in one account, but one account can only have one pay source, one bank account that actually pays it out to. So you would have to then go through your royalties dashboard, filter by songwriter, and pay out everybody. Or you can set up with this feature that we call access and have all the royalties just go straight to these independent bank accounts. Yeah,
to me, that was like a major reason why it was just a no-brainer. And I took it to Ed and Rob Crichlow with RCR Publishing. I said, SongTrust has it figured out. I was actually doing some research on our good friends at Straight Up Entertainment, where the VP, Jimmy Kang, manages Capadonna and some of the original guys connected to Wu-Tang, the Wu-Tang Clan. Jimmy is the VP of Wu-Tang Management. So I actually heard, George, that Downtown, when I saw that Downtown Publishing had picked up the Wu-Tang catalog, and then I was doing research and I saw that Downtown was responsible for SongTrust. I was like, wow, this is amazing. They got classic catalogs like Wu-Tang Clan to like your major classic rock and soul artists and these brilliant people who've built intellectual property catalogs that are selling for $100 million plus now. And now the people who are just starting out to build their intellectual property and build residual income and things like that can be a major, major asset, that the same company was behind that. And it's obvious the technology you guys are bringing to the table is absolutely amazing. It's second to none and getting better all the time. So I just want to open this up to Jerome or Brian or anybody. Would you guys like to, maybe touch base and ask a couple of questions? This is for you guys, Bri, Focus, anybody on this call who's catching this. If you have any other questions you'd like to ask George, or we could touch on, and Melissa as well, feel free to jump in there and be the first to do it.
I know it's a lot. Publishing is very complex. It's a lot to wrap your head around. I remember when I kind of first got into it, and I had kind of this very fleshed out understanding of basically what was going on, but when people would ask me questions about, or if I had any questions after a presentation like this, I'd be like, let me come back to you in 2 days. And maybe I'll have like, maybe I'll have my questions fleshed out by then. Like, this is a lot. So don't feel bad at all if you don't, if you're just soaking everything in right now. I completely understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How's
Sorry
everybody
about that.
doing?
Whoops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Brian Sykes. I'm sorry for I want to ask a question. I think you all might have asked it. I caught the stream a little late, but I want to ask about artists that already have their publishing with their PRO.
That's a great question. I wish I could pull this back up, but so if you already have your publishing set up with your PRO, that means you already have your own publishing entity, which is a great start. Having your own publishing entity, along with the marketing plus that it gives you, because your marketing name is going to appear, your publishing company name is going to appear on your registrations. It also gives you the ability to potentially sign other people to that publishing company later on down the road. SongTrust, the way SongTrust works with you in that case is that when you sign up as a writer to the SongTrust platform, you'll actually be prompted, hey, does this writer have a publishing company? And you'll enter your publishing company name and that publishing company's IPI into our system. So in that way, SongTrust knows that we're administering these copyrights for you on behalf of your publishing company rather than just for you. So your publishing company name will continue to appear on those registrations at your PRO. We can work on behalf of your publishing company, right? So that you'll maintain that, and you can continue to use that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. Anybody else?
So I went on to your site there and I already signed up for a workshop. There's the Music Publishing 101. So I'm taking that, but I see that there's a couple of different events. There's a lot of resources on the website that I'm going to take some time on this. So I appreciate that and everything you said. My question is I use the example of my daughter all the time. She is on Twitch. So she is a gamer on Twitch. She's also on TikTok. And you touched real quick on, an artist collecting the royalties on the TikTok streams. Not quite sure how all that works. And I'm sure that's a whole topic for another day probably. But how does it, is there something I could be looking at, or how would I fit in to that realm as a music manager? So her being, so I guess I'd be the publisher of her, but she is not the music creator. She is the one. So like if I do a review, so if I do a YouTube stream where people are sending me, because it happens all the time. I get new up and coming artists sending me their tracks. They're already put into Spotify and the various music platforms. But we'll use me. If I'm doing the stream, I'm featuring this artist, that artist, whatever. How do I fit into, what category do I fit in, and how does, can you?
Yeah, no, I got you.
Okay, thank you. You might have to re-explain that.
No, it's all good. I think I basically understand. Like, so if you're TikTok or if you're Twitch, and Twitch is behind on this, Twitch needs to start paying people. But
and that's one thing that I've been really digging in and researching and trying to figure out, like, even if it's a DJ streaming it, like they own their right to be able to distribute, I guess. So does everybody have to have that's the part I'm confused about with those platforms, because it is up and coming, and this is something we could all be jumping on, we need to do this right. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff is catching up. And a lot of these companies, to be honest, like a high level understanding of it is that a lot of these companies are asking forgiveness before permission. So Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, none of those people licensed the music. None of those people talked to the publishers of the music before they allowed users to come on and use copyrighted material.
right.
It just wasn't a conversation. Now they're having to go back and figure out, okay, who do we pay? Who do we pay? Who do we need to license this material from? Peloton, for example, was in a huge lawsuit with publishers. Most recently, SongTrust was a big part of that lawsuit because they had just been using copyrighted material before actually licensing it.
Yeah.
One of the big developments in that area is YouTube. YouTube's Content ID system is state of the art. They can
Right.
plug in songs, they can find user-generated content, they can
Yes.
split royalties based on the ads that are being put on the videos, but
Right.
not everybody has that.
But that
just bottom
monetization is
line.
hard to get because you have to have over 10,000. Yeah, I got you. So, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, absolutely. That's really all I was saying is that like those systems where copyright holders can be accurately paid out based on their material, it just doesn't exist everywhere. And so a lot of this podcasting, for example, there are no royalties for songs used in podcasts. It just
Right.
doesn't exist yet. They haven't
Yeah.
found a way to accurately track it and pay it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of this stuff is like, unfortunately, it's very hard to get to, and we're just kind of waiting for these people to like pay up.
So for me, like I'm just using me as an example, but if if I become a streamer like my daughter,
Yeah.
and so to do it the correct way, would I, as a member of, I'm sorry, hold on one second. As a member, so I am on SongTrust
Mhm.
as a publisher. If
Mhm.
however you guys put me in, let's just say, all right, an artist, would I submit? I don't know. I just don't understand how that work. Like,
No, I got you. So
playlist?
as a streamer, it's up to the platform actually to pay out. Right now, it's the responsibility of the platform to talk to the publishers and to get licenses. When you're a restaurant and you're playing songs in the restaurant, or you have people coming to perform at the restaurant, you have to talk to ASCAP. You have to go to ASCAP and get a license to play their whole catalog. It's the same with any website, right? It's not the person that's playing the music in the venue that has to pay. It's the venue, right? So same with Twitch. It's their responsibility to pay those licenses for that content that's being used on their platform. And like you said, it's a whole conversation. You get into litigation and how people are looking at things. It's very complicated when it comes to like whose responsibility it is to pay and who is actually paying. But that's essentially what it is. It's not your responsibility as the streamer. The only responsibility you have as the streamer is to abide by the guidelines that Twitch has set down. And Twitch might say, hey, don't use any copyrighted content because we're not paying for it, right? And then if you do, they could potentially shut down your account.
Awesome. Hey, those are some great questions. Thank you, Melissa, aka Momma Slim. I want to thank Fixx Radio Show, Bri Smilez, RCR Publishing, and so much more, all our attendees. We really want to thank you all for being on here. We want to thank Mark from Action Coach. Something I want to touch on real quick is I joined where Melissa really hit the nail on the head. When you go to songtrust.com, they are a great information resource. I was able to plug into the webinar for the MLC and the learning about what the MLC is doing. And I was thinking about this, y'all, in my mind. I said, man, well, so now I'm going to have to look into how I'm going to connect to the MLC. And somebody jumped in on SongTrust and they made a great point. When you have a SongTrust membership, you get everything the MLC brings to the table. You get that with your SongTrust membership. SongTrust is handling that. these hundreds and hundreds of different places they have to collect your royalties from. And they're doing it. One of the things why we are working with SongTrust and why the MLC is so attractive to what we're doing is their transparency. They're very transparent. They're very honest. It's not a hidden hand anymore of keeping the artists and songwriters in the dark. If you want the information, it's no longer just being an artist, y'all. It's about being an entrepreneur. So doing these focused webinars that the Cleveland Nashville Connection is doing and teaming up with RCR Publishing, SongTrust. We're in talks with some other great sync licensing organizations right now to do another one next month. So feel free to email us at clevelandnashville@gmail.com. I suggest looking into signing up as a SongTrust songwriter. That will empower you to work with companies like Cleveland Nashville Connection and RCR Publishing and other great companies out there. It'll have you ready to rock and roll. Once again, I'm Brandon David with the Cleveland Nashville.
One more question. I'm sorry.
Encore. Does anybody want an encore? Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Momma Slim.
Okay, so when we become a SongTrust affiliate per se or member, these events such as the this one coming up, this New York LON Connect, is there any kind of discount, like because we're a member? Do we get any kind of discount on these tickets?
I actually did not know that those were ticketed.
Yeah, it says $199. So it's like.
I would have to ask the powers that be about that. Actually, okay. I don't know.
I would really love to attend this event. Like, it's online, obviously, but this is really good. 25th through the 28th, and it's amazing. So, anyways, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, so we're gonna plug that out. If you want to invest in your career, Bri Smilez just posted recently about the difference of what you'll spend. It was a truth bomb. People will spend $100 on their Netflix over the year. They'll spend $100 on some new sneakers. But when it comes to a seminar or a webinar or investing in their education, they're like, oh, no, that's too much money. So I think Momma Slim, aka Melissa, or vice versa, she's hitting on a great point. She's looking to invest in her career. And she's looking at, okay, and you got to do your due diligence to be able to save and get your best deal, negotiate, use that charisma that you have as an artist and as an entrepreneur to get the best deal for yourself, but do not be afraid to invest. Our plan is we're going to offer as much content to y'all, just like SongTrust is offering as much free content. There's coming a time where it's not always going to be free. So I'm grateful to have you all on board now, participating in this, but everybody's paying a price to get to where they're going. So don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Is there any last minute from Rob Crichlow or Ed that would from RCR Publishing that would like to just chime in anything to close us out?
Well, I would just like to say, George, you did a phenomenal job on that presentation. So thank you for your humbleness, but we all enjoyed that for sure. Yes. And I look forward to working with SongTrust in the future, and it'll be a great partnership.
I appreciate that, Rob. Thank you.
George, how can we reach out to you?
Yeah, George at songtrust.com is my email.
Perfect. Great, y'all. And once again, you can email clevelandnashville@gmail.com. We'll be glad to include you in our next February 6th Music Tech Media Summit, 2 p.m. EST, including the Fixx Radio Show, RCR Publishing, and so many more. You're going to want to definitely tune into that. The Fixx Radio Show, you got any last words to close us out?
No, just thank you again, George. Great presentation. Definitely some valuable information today. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hey, well, thanks again for tuning in. Bri, you got any last minute words?
No, I'm just biting off everybody's coattails. That was an awesome presentation. It answered so many questions. I went to school for music business, but hearing you bring it the way that you did and just hearing all the services that you guys offer, I'm definitely going to, sign up and be a part of it because I see the value in it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bri.
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks again, George. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We got more to come. We got our focused summits and webinars that'll be happening every month. I'm Brandon David. Make sure you put first things first. You got a vertical relationship and you got those horizontal relationships. If you work for money, you might get money. But if you work to build honest, rich relationships, out of those rich relationships will flow everything you need and so much more. Once again, I'm Brandon David with the Cleveland Nashville Connection. God bless. Much success. Keep it moving.